Hey there, folks. Welcome to the Connected Classroom. My name is Rusty May, and I'm going to be your host today. We're going to be talking about cyber safety and dealing with cybersecurity here in the Connected Classroom. I started this show 6 months ago when the pandemic hit and have been doing a weekly show talking about educators, talking to them about what was important to them and the kinds of things that were affecting them and their ability to do their work last spring and going into this fall. And in talking to an educator recently, I was really concerned when I asked a question about cyber safety, considering all the kids being online and doing so much work online. And the response that I got from the educator was that we didn't need to teach kids about cyber safety, that they knew all this stuff, that they were cyber natives and that they were digital natives and all these kinds of ideas. And it really concerned me because not unlike the ideas of talking about different kinds of things with kids, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, those kinds of things. Oftentimes we find ourselves in a situation where it's difficult to begin the conversation. It's often embarrassing and it's something that we don't want to get into. And so we will oftentimes kind of let it take care of itself. And I don't believe that that's the case or can be the case right now, especially in schools, because we put kids in this situation and because we've been mandated to allow them to learn virtually, and oftentimes they're learning on our equipment, using our internet, using our technology. We have to be aware of our responsibilities in this regard. And so today's podcast, today's webinar is going to focus on just that, just the cybersecurity aspect of what it is. I'm going to share my screen right now, talk a little bit, got a slideshow for you. I hope you're enjoying this incredible the Emergency Home Learning and More Summit that was put together by the Learning Revolution. Steve and his crew have been working tirelessly since this all began to provide resources for educators and parents. And this summit, more than any other, I think is a really important, interesting part of what they're offering. So I appreciate you being here with me today, watching this virtually. We get a lot more people watching the recordings, and that's great. I see that we have a Gigi Johnson that just joined us. Thank you for joining us as well. I'd love to hear from you in a few minutes if you'd like to chime in and share. Tell us where you're from and why you're visiting today. I'll ask if you want to unmute and introduce yourself to the audience.
Good morning. Thank you for
Hi.
having me.
Thanks for being here. Are you an educator?
I work in a community college, and I used to be an educator, but now I'm more staff, assist with staff with students.
Where
And I'm sorry,
where are you located?
in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Okay. And so you assist the staff with students in what regard?
Well, I help them to get registered, help them to access their different academic accounts, help them to get um, going within their particular pathway. We have what's called guided pathways
Right.
at our college, and so we it's more to help them to stay on track.
So today I was wondering, we're talking about cybersecurity and or cybersecurity, cyber safety, cyberbullying, these kinds of things. Is there any, are you guys on going face to face, or are you doing virtual learning at this point?
It's both, depending on what type of program it is that require the hands-on. So yeah, so we're working virtually and in class as well.
In terms of this, the idea of the virtual stuff, are there any classes or any resources out there that are specifically geared towards helping students be safer online?
Yes, in fact, I work within the online department, and we always have um, um, online information as far as helping students to, as far as the COVID and the pandemic, particularly. And so the college is always staying diligent and vigilant in allowing students and staff and faculty access to that information. What they do in particular is send out weekly, I think it's like bi-weekly, what's called communications, week ahead communications. And we're always talking about, you know, the new information, the new guidelines that's going on within the CDC, and how we can keep ourselves safe and keep others safe.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you being here. I hope you'll join in. Like I said, we usually get more people watching the recording than we do live, but I appreciate you being with me today.
Well, thank you so much.
All
I
right.
appreciate being here.
So we're going to go back to sharing the screen. And again, what we're talking about today in the Emergency Home Learning Summit and more is the idea of cyberbullying and cybersecurity, considering the fact that we are now in a situation where we've put so many more of our kids online and they're spending more time online. And this, especially in the group of kids in the age group between 10 and 18. And that's really the group of kids. I know Ms. Johnson was talking about her college kids. A lot of times we think that by the time they get to college, they figured a lot of this stuff out, but I think that's probably not the case. As I realized when I got to college, my first term, went into my dorm room and there was a free Visa card that was there. Just had to fill out the application with your name and your social security number and you would get a Visa card. And not knowing anything about credit or debit or any of those kinds of things, the majority of my friends got in over their head with $1,000 Visa card that they used very quickly to buy things that they thought they needed, and then we're dealing with a 20% interest rate. So the idea that kids really understand this stuff, that they're digital natives, and so they understand the dangers that are out there, I think is misguided. And I think we really have a responsibility to pay attention to this. And with more kids online more and more now, and with more kids who are being affected mentally because of the challenges associated with COVID, we're seeing a rise in cyberbullying. It hasn't been so much in the last 6 months. We haven't seen a significant change in research that we've seen. But what we have seen is that in the last 6 months, the numbers are similar to what we would normally see in a year. So it seems to be that there are more opportunities for kids to be playing around online, figuring things out, trying to deal with boredom and some of the other things that are going on. As we know that a lot of times bullying is about getting attention and it's about getting people to pay attention. And with more kids online and more of these opportunities, we're seeing more of these incidences happening. And we're also seeing it on Zoom. I don't know if you've been a part of a Zoom conference where it was Zoom bombed, which happened to us on this show at the beginning of the show when we first started. We were Zoom bombed, and it was a really kind of an overwhelming experience. So I see Teddy G's join us. I'm going to ask Teddy to unmute and to say hello to everybody. Teddy, you there?
Hi, Rusty. Good day, everyone.
How you doing?
Good, good. We're seeing a surge of cases, unfortunately, both in upstate and New York City. So I'm not sure what the plan is now, but I do work at SUNY Geneseo, a liberal arts school in upstate New York, and they are starting their first batch of randomized testing for staff and faculty. So that's a good sign that hopefully between now and Thanksgiving break, they can at least get most of the staff and faculty members tested across campus. Another school within the SUNY system, SUNY Cortland, is going back remotely for 2 weeks due to a surge of cases. And within the New York City public school, there's also been cases and clusters amongst different areas, specifically in Queens and Brooklyn, where they've seen clusters of cases. So they had schools within those areas closed for the next 2 weeks.
Okay. We're talking about cyberbullying and cyber safety today. Is there anything that goes on at your college or within your college system that helps students to kind of be aware of these sorts of threats and the online challenges, cyberbullying, cyber stalking, those kinds of things? Any kind of programs that are set up that you're aware of?
I know where I work at the university, the CIT department, the Computer Information Technology department, they do a good job in advocating and promoting avoiding cyberbullying and just malware that may occur among students. I know you had mentioned earlier about getting hacked, and that's pretty often, especially within the business realm, the educational realm, with emails. You might get those fake email accounts that you think are coming from a professor, that may be coming from a third party, that may infiltrate the university's internet system or Wi-Fi system. So the university does a good job of doing that, but it's just really hard to catch because some folks have definitely improved in how they go about cyberbullying.
Okay. Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I hope you'll join the conversation with us as well as we go forward.
All right, thank you, Rusty.
Thanks. I see we got another one joining us, The Hub. Are you there? Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, hi. My name is Luba Vangelova, and I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm the founder of a co-learning group called The Hub. So I just thought I'd tune in.
Well, that's great. How are things in DC?
Who knows? Who knows? It's an interesting time to be here.
And your group that you're working with, is this kind of like a group for kind of like satellite learning for students to come together and work remotely, or is it something
For
different?
For now, yes. Eventually, the plan is to create an all ages co-learning, co-working space.
Okay.
But for this year, because of the circumstances, it's online only with a micro academy, which is a consistent cohort co-learning experience for 9 to 12-year-olds.
How many
And
students do you have?
we've got a handful right now. Uh, and then we've also got some a la carte programming that is in the works for more kind of casual signups. But since we're catering to 9 to 12-year-olds primarily for this first year, I thought this would be an important topic to kind of get into more.
Are you guys doing anything in that regard? Are you talking at all about cyber safety and cyberbullying with your students?
A little bit, but I think it might be useful to do more in the future. So,
Great. Well, thank you for being here. I hope you'll join in the conversation as we go forward.
okay, thank you.
All right, so as I was saying before, we're talking about the idea that we are seeing a spike in cyberbullying. I think that a lot of that has to do, again, going back to some of the mental. I was reading an article today talking about 6,000 or 7,000 experts and scientists around the world signing in a document basically saying that the mental health effects on young people are much more devastating than the effects of COVID, and that, you know, we really need to work on protecting the vulnerable and getting things back to normal for those who are less at risk. And because of those things, we're seeing an uptick in mental health issues. We're seeing an uptick in a lot of areas that would create an environment that where bullying would be something that kids may turn to as a way of kind of trying to ease the boredom or to try to get some attention to themselves. I mentioned the Zoom bomb that happened to this show, I think 3 or 4 months ago. Teddy was probably there when it happened. It's just amazing because it's the most ridiculous thing. They just come on and they curse and they say stupid things, and then, you know, that's it. And that's their whole goal is to disrupt a meeting and try to get some sense of attention out of it. And because of this COVID situation, we're seeing more and more kids exposed to media more often, getting opportunities to participate in social media more often at earlier ages, and it's becoming a real problem. For those of you that joined us late, I mentioned that one of the things that really affected me, Teddy was on the meeting 2 weeks ago. We had a guest, or not a guest, but we had someone who was attending the meeting, a gentleman named Howard, who couldn't have been more adamant as a retired educator that we did not need to teach kids anything about the internet, that they knew everything they needed to know. And I have been telling educators for the last 20 years as a classroom management specialist to say to them, if there's something that you need the students to know, you need to teach it to them, because the idea that kids come to school ready to learn is a complete farce. And it's one of the farces in education that really causes a lot of problems. They don't have the social skills. They don't know the basic rules and regulations. They haven't been taught how to manage themselves effectively to be successful in the classroom. And now that we're in this virtual world of teaching kids, the same thing has to be true. We need to be bringing this information to the kids. When we're seeing numbers like this, 95% of teens connected to the internet, with 85% on social media, and knowing that the parents are going through similar struggles, knowing that the parents are oftentimes dealing with either having to teach from home or having to work with kids at home, or going to work and being concerned about their own health and so forth. These are things that we need to be sharing with them and getting this information out. This PowerPoint that I'm sharing with you today, if any of you would like it, I'm more than happy to send you a PDF copy. You just send me an email and I will put that in the chat towards the end of this presentation. This is an interesting idea of where kids are being affected most. And so when you're looking at this, you would obviously think that these aren't apps. These are the first three are really not apps that are going to be used by kids very often. But when you see the top three, Snapchat, Facebook, and Instagram, Snapchat is growing rapidly as being the #1 place where it's happening. We're seeing more of those kinds of things where kids are using Snapchat as a way of, taking a shot at another kid. And it's interesting to know too, it's our definition of bullying oftentimes is an off, it's important to remember that bullying is a repeat occurrence of a child or a person intimidating or saying negative things or mean things to a person over and over again. It's not a one-off kind of thing, but we are seeing a lot of one-off sorts of I'd say mini bullying incidences that people are taking more seriously now, even in friendship groups where you're seeing a kid, not unlike what you see a lot in daytime television with student after school programs, where there will oftentimes be one kid in the crowd who is he's not the best athlete, not the best looking, not the one who gets all the girls or boys, and they'll tend to kind of make fun of that person. And that seems to be an okay thing. And so television shows oftentimes misrepresent what it means to be in a friendship group as well. And a lot of kids are in friendship groups where they're being kind of teased and joked with on a regular basis, and they're not really even aware of the fact that it can be, bullying and something that can really affect them. Some of the issues that result from cyberbullying, and this isn't just the young kids at all. This is also across um, the age groups where you're seeing this kind of stuff into the 20s and late 20s, early 30s, where you're seeing people being affected by these kinds of things. But these are some of the ideas of ways that kids are starting to regress. They're being bullied online. These effects are beginning to have an effect on them. The one that here with me that was very positive was we're seeing some kids delete their social media profiles. And what was interesting when I was doing research for this presentation was that oftentimes kids will not uh, talk about cyberbullying or delete their profiles or block their cyberbully. And the reason why is because apparently it's more important for them to know what's being said about them than it is for them to not hear it. So this intense need to hear what other people are saying about them is keeping them connected or enmeshed with the cyberbully. So the fact that 26% of kids are cutting off their chain is a good thing. I would imagine it's probably because they've talked to an adult. And it's important for us as adults to have an awareness of some of the signs so that we can begin the conversation if they can't. Some of the signs that are that your child or that any child within your care is being cyberbullied these are pretty oftentimes the ones that you want to look for. And the most important one that they pointed out in all of the articles that I read is that if because children are absolutely enamored by technology. And so if your child or a student in your care or someone in your class all of a sudden is reluctant to use a computer or an electronic device of any kind, that's almost a telltale sign that they're being cyberbullied, because the fear associated with their cyberbullying or whatever it is that they're experiencing is so much greater than any benefit that they're getting from going online, that they're willing to put the computer down. So if you notice something like that, and again, these are the kinds of things that if wherever you are, I know Teddy, you're in a library, Ms. Johnson, I believe you're working in student affairs and so forth, getting this information out through the hub to the parents and so forth so that they can pay attention to it. This is really the goal of this presentation, is to be able to get this out. Some of the other signs associated with being cyberbullied are similar to the ones with bullying, and some of the things that we experienced when we were in school as well with the face-to-face bullying that was happening. We have anxiety, kid who was constantly wanting to go to the nurse's office because they don't feel well. These are things that these are important to really notice. And on the other side of that column, and I didn't realize I doubled up this, I have another slide after this that talks about this as well, but these are signs that someone you know is a cyberbully. And this is really important as well, especially within your own preview of kind of noticing what's going on around us and being aware of our online activities and so forth. But these are things that you can tell: numerous online accounts, laughing excessively when they're on their online accounts. If you come close to them while they're on the computer and they either click off or they shut the lid, then they shut the top of their computer, that could easily be a sign that they're doing something or accessing sites that maybe you wouldn't want them to see as well. But these are things that are really important, and oftentimes what will happen is that you'll notice that the number one punishment when you get involved with something like this is to take the device away from the child. And if the child is adamant about getting the device back, that could be a sign that something is going on as well. So this is a really useful graphic to have to get out to parents, to get out to students, for other things that you can see. This is the second slide that I was talking about, where you can see if you're seeing kids spending a lot period of time making snide comments or laughing while they're online. Anything like that where you're out there and you can notice that something's going on. If the child's becoming irritable and aggressive. I mean, this is what we see with bullies. Oftentimes you'll see changes in behavior. You'll see much more negative tones of voices and so forth. Something's going on inside the child, and they're out there trying to take it out on another kid because they feel like that'll help them feel better about themselves or be more in control of something. We see this a lot of times in kids who are have home environments where they don't feel a great deal of control. They're looking for control somewhere. They're looking for a chance to show that they're the boss of some environment, and they'll either do it in person if they're in school, or they can do it on the computer and cyberbully other kids as well. So important things to think about. The top 10 ways to make sure that to help kids to figure out how to protect themselves against cyberbullying. Number one, do a project, do an assignment, have kids research it. This is the time where, as online educators, so many of us are looking for things that kids can do. Have kids research cyberbullying, have them find out what it's all about, have them do a report, some sort of a feedback loop that talks about cyberbullying and what it looks like and what it sounds like and how it happens, and have them talk to each other about experiences that they've had, but really educate kids and immerse them in the area of cyberbullying and cyber safety. That we put these two things separately. They kind of are two different ideas, but they're really important because a lot of the tenets of one protect us from the other as well, whether it's cyber stalking or it's somebody getting access to a computer like Teddy mentioned earlier. These are things that can happen much more easily when kids have access to technology, and an unwanted email getting through and a kid clicking on a link, and the next thing you know, it could be throughout your entire organization before you know it. So we need to educate kids. We need to be talking about this. We need to be talking about the realities of what the online environment looks like, and educating them on a daily basis about this. The next thing we want to talk to them about is their passwords and figuring out how to use them successfully. I personally find this one difficult, but I also know that there are ways to encrypt passwords. There are ways that you can download passwords and use the super um, difficult passwords that include symbols and numbers and capital letters and all those kinds of things. I know a lot of us probably have had the same PIN for our ATM card since we were in college. And we never really think about changing it, but maybe we need to think about that, and especially in this particular period of time. But we want to talk to them about making sure that they're not sharing that information with other people, not with other students or with anybody online. It may seem like it's okay just to let somebody know the password that you use, but I know for a fact that in my wife's case, if she was to share the password that she uses that the most often in any of the places that she goes. And most of us are like that. We have one that's kind of a go-to that we use in sites that we kind of consider as throwaways. But if we're using one in a throwaway site, like a gaming site or something like that, and we share it with a friend of ours, and it's the same password that we happen to use in our social media account, that opens us up to a real problem. And so talking to kids about passwords, helping them get articulate and how to deal with them, what a strong password looks like, and knowing how to keep track of them so that they know what to do. This has been around since the beginning of social media, and it started to generate a lot of a lot of talk and a lot of conversation in probably the last 10 or 15 years, when colleges and universities began to research social media accounts of students who were applying to their institutions, or jobs were looking at social media accounts for potential job employees of being hired. And kids really need to understand that anything that they put into now Snapchat and some of these other places, that they guarantee that the image will disappear within a period of time. But if somebody takes a screenshot of that, it's out there. So you have to let kids know that whatever they're posting, whether it's photos, whether it's comments, so many people in the public eye right now are being taken back years in their developmental period. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but they are being challenged on some of the things that they might have said 10 or 15 years ago. They may have had a complete different feeling about that now, but they are, they're held accountable for what they said on Twitter 10 years ago, or what they said on Facebook, or these other things. And photos especially, oftentimes we can get into situations with preteens and teenagers where they think that they're, oftentimes we do things because we feel like that we're in a safe environment, that that this person wouldn't take advantage of me, or I want this person to love me or care about me or whatever. We need to talk about this stuff. Kids need to be hearing it from us. College students need to be hearing it from us. When I was in college, my second time, when I was in my 40s, right at the beginning of this whole social media takeoff in the late 90s, early 2000s, I can't tell you how many photos that I got that would not be considered appropriate. I got them from friends, people sending stuff across the internet, in emails, and sometimes you would open them at work and you'd just be shocked that somebody would send them. And then you had times when you were in relationships, when somebody might, not be able to see somebody for a while and send you something that it just doesn't need to be out there. If somebody doesn't have good intentions, those photos can come back to bite you. So we want to talk about this. We want to have kids explore it and look into it, research it. These are great activities for kids to be doing right now. Universities, I'm going to be talking about trying to start an online security class at the university that I'm working at. Start doing adjunct professor work at a university in the States, and hopefully be able to encourage them to do that as well. So this is one that goes to what Teddy was talking about. All of us have been told this, but the most important thing that we can do is, and whether we open emails or text messages or Facebook messages and so forth, if it's somebody that we don't know, and especially if it's an attachment, it's really important that we understand and that we teach kids that you just can't click on anything. You might think it's a new friend, you might think it's somebody like that, but if it's not somebody that you know, it's not somebody that you're aware of, 9 times out of 10, it's somebody trying to scam, somebody trying to get into your computer, somebody trying to download a virus. And so this is a way for people to get access to children. And if children right now having this kind of access online, this is something that we really need to encourage them not to do, and be aware of what they're doing, and using our, our parental controls and doing those kinds of things. There will be a slide that comes up later, teaching them to log out of their online accounts when they're not using them. Anytime that they're not in their online accounts, they need to log out and log back in. Now, I know a lot of us like to leave them open. My wife, for example, sometimes can have 20 or 30 screens open at the same time on her computer, but it's really not safe to walk around with logged in, whether it's in your laptop or on your phone, because if you lose it or it gets away from you, the next thing you know, somebody has a chance to get access to your online activity, or get into your Facebook account or your Snapchat account, and be able to put something out there that really could have an effect on you. So talk to them about logging out, talk to them about not being in the account for any particular period of time. We also need to talk to them about what they're doing, and understanding that, the final slide in this presentation talks about the idea of, doing unto others what you would do. But pause before you post. Think about what you're saying. Think about what it is that you're doing. We try to get kids to think before they speak. Obviously, that's important, but if you don't think before you speak, you might say something inappropriate. If you don't think before you write, or you post, or you put something out there, you're saying something permanent. So these are things that can affect jobs, scholarships, internships. Those are things that can be out there for long periods of time. And with all the acrimony that's going on right now, the two sides and the political events being so angry at each other, and we have parents on either sides of those issues, and kids who are oftentimes watching things and listening to things that they're not convinced of. They're not completely convinced one way or the other, but they're feeling like maybe they should say something, or share something with their friends, or talk about this issue. And I've had so many kids recently asking me about the riots and what's going on, and what's going on with the protests and so forth. And um, this is stuff that's interesting to them, and they need to be able to talk about it, but in a safe way, not putting it out there online in a way that can get in, really affect them and affect their future. So again, conversations, research projects, talking to them, making this a part of our daily 5-minute morning routine of, safety tip every morning online. I'm going to start adding this to my daily videos, and make sure that they're doing, that the kids, even the youngest kids, are at least aware of the idea that this kind of thing is happening. You can encourage kids in your school or in your university to talk about raising awareness, creating clubs, building a campaign, hosting events. These are great ways for kids to get involved and to find out more at a time when kids are looking for activities, whether it's online campus activities, things that they can do, things they can get involved with. This is a great opportunity to give kids kind of some, some power, some control over of what's going on. And they're all being thrown into this universe, into this pandemic, and trying to give them some ideas about ways that they can really advocate for themselves and advocate for the other students at their school. And their friends. And most of them have had a friend that's been cyberbullied, or know someone who's been affected by cyber stalking. And they can go out and really affect that. And this is a great opportunity to raise awareness and give kids some, like I said, some control in terms of what they do. Obviously, in setting up privacy controls, this for the hub, you would want to be able to do this with your computers, and I'm sure that you do. I know a lot of the schools that I work with, they have privacy controls, which is it's difficult for me because I do daily videos for kids, and my video provider is Vimeo, and Vimeo apparently has a bad reputation in the educational community because I believe it has a lot of what they consider artistic pornography on the site. And so they're very reticent to allow kids to go to Vimeo. So we've had to find workarounds to that. But I'd much rather have a workaround to that than to be exposing kids to things that they don't need to be exposed to. If you're a parent, this is something that you can do. I know my brother and sister-in-law, the thing that they did was they told their kids they would be checking their history and looking at their online activity. And if the history or the online activity was erased, that they would lose the equipment for a week. So there are ways to do it. Obviously, we don't want to intrude too much. I don't think we want to know exactly what's going on. I think that's too much information. And for most of us, it would, I think my parents would have been horrified if they'd known some of the things that I was doing when I was a kid. And I don't think I was a bad kid, but it certainly probably would have made things much more anxious and nervous for them if they would have been aware of some of the craziness that we were up to. But, um, talk to them about certain things. Talk to them about accepting friend requests from people that they don't know, and talk to them about, how do you identify someone online. Talk to them about the fact that people may not be who they say they are, and that their picture may not be who that they say that they are. Talk to them about not sharing information about things like when you have an online cyber stalker, one of the things that you worry the most about is a kid sharing any information whatsoever about the neighborhood that they live in, the school that they go to, or the places that are close to them, because all that does is begin to bring down the person who may be looking to cause trouble, and it brings down the amount of information as to where they have to start looking to try to find this kid and identify who it is. If they have, that's, my wife and I are adamant about not putting our kids' pictures online. But we also don't want to put pictures of our kids' book bag that has their school name on it, or other things like that. I mean, it's even to the point now where you think about some of these things, like on our cars. I know that sometimes you'll have a picture of like a father and a mother and 3 children, and that's great. Some of the cars have the father, mother, and 3 children with the names of the father and the mother and the 3 children right underneath there. Well, that gives anybody that has some negative intention and is able to understand what's going on, can find out the name of a child relatively easy. We don't want to give that information out. So as adults, we have to be smart as well about how we're sharing this information. But more than that, we have to be sharing it with the students in our care, because now they have more access. This is a great idea. All of you that are on here today, you can do this right now while you're listening to me. Google yourself, find out what's being said about you, find out what's happening. If there's any information out there about you or about your business or about your company, or any negative kinds of stuff that might be out there, so that you can take action if anybody's put up a negative comment about you or about your business or something like that. I Google myself all the time, and I get me, and there's a Rusty May who makes saddles. So it's really interesting to see. He hand makes saddles, I think in Montana. And so it's always interesting to see all the cool stuff that he's doing. But I have a show online, I have a website. And so, I'd like to know if there are people out there talking about my website, or about some of the things that I were doing, that I've been doing, this show that I've been doing for the last 6 months. I want to know what people are saying online and out there. So Google yourself, find out what's going on, and encourage your students to do the same. This is probably more obviously more so for the older kids, but if you have a kid who's active, I'd say between the 10, 12, 18 year old group as well, it's probably, interesting for you. It could be a family event or something that you do as a class, just to Google yourself and see who it is. And last but not least, obviously talk to them about the idea of not cyberbullying others, because that goes back to the idea of thinking before you post. It's really important to remember that oftentimes when you're in a virtual environment, and I'm just trying to teach myself this now, I really, because I'm a very direct person in my face-to-face communications, I never really thought about the ideas of emojis and using emojis and so forth. But now I'm starting to realize that I can send what seems to me to be a perfectly innocuous text message to somebody that I work with, and can get a somewhat kind of an off-putting response based on the fact that they didn't understand what I was saying or how I put it. I didn't put an emoji in there that helped them to understand that I was being facetious or I was being funny. Even my own family members sometimes don't know. So, we need to be open to that idea and to use those kinds of things effectively, so that we can explain to people, and also explain to kids that sometimes, they might take what their friend said to them as being bullying or being mean, but before they react to that, think about it. Think about what they might have said, maybe send a note and say, hey, were you being serious there? Was that a joke? Because it's very easy to be misunderstood in text messages and emails, and we want kids to know that as well. So, as I said, any of this information is available to any of you. I will stop the share right now, and I will send out my email address in the chat. If you'd like a copy of the PDF, please send it to me, and I will send me your email, and I will send you the copy of the PDF. I'd love to get your feedback on what we talked about. See if Ms. Johnson's still with us, if she wanted to share anything, any thoughts about what we talked about. Ms. Johnson?
Hi, Rusty. Thank you. And please call me Gigi.
Gigi?
Yes. This is so very important and so informative. I'm a grandmother. I'm also a great grandmother now with two little new babies
Wow.
from two of my grandchildren. But one of my granddaughters, who is now 15, she had been bullied since she was like maybe 12. And of course, the pandemic has been just recently this year, but with the online, having to go remote and online and that and virtual. But in school, she was bullied, and her mother, who is my oldest daughter, and her father um, took her out of school. It was just so bad. It had got so bad, and it was by coming from one of her so-called best friends,
Right.
which was so horrifying to her, and that just depleted her self-esteem. And so they put her in another school. Somehow, a young girl that was in her classroom knew the girl that was from the previous school, and told the other girls where she was. And so the bullying happened all over again. So
Right.
that was year one. Year two, they put her in homeschooling. And so then after she was in homeschooling for a while and got off the internet, and it was interesting that slide that you showed, um, where the children are, well, the youth, children, young adults are more socializing on those type of platforms, so it was the Facebook, it was the Snapchat. And she had all these accounts, and it's interesting how these young folks get all these different accounts, and it's like, what are you doing on all these different accounts? Why do you
Right.
need all these different accounts? But I guess, in my mind, you can, depict the accounts for when you talked about, your childhood a little bit. And so I guess these different accounts can be assimilated to different friendships
Right.
for them, because of course this was a misnomer. We didn't have anything like this. We had a bunch of friends when we
Right.
were growing up. And so I guess this is, their friend account and all that kind of stuff. And, and me and my ex-husband, their father, I thought, we did a pretty good job in helping them to understand the danger stranger and all that kind of thing. And they, they introduced it to their children. My children introduced it to their children, but you just don't know what they're doing. You just don't know, when you had to slide up, when they close the laptop, or, they don't want people to know what they're doing and all that kind of stuff. In my household, children under 18 don't have privacy,
Right.
none at all. And so, but this is my house. I pay the rent, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I grant them their individualism and raise them that way, and even with the hand with my grandchildren. But going back to this granddaughter here, moving forward, so then they homeschooled her for a year. Then she, said, well, I'm comfortable in going back to school. So the next year she went back to school. And of course, that was like last year.
Right.
And going into the pandemic. And so it happened again. And we told, we changed her phone number. We changed, to had her get off all the internet platforms and all that. And then again, the same thing happened. And it's like, well, wait a minute, we have to look at what are you doing?
Right.
What is your position in this? And so she kept, she wears her heart on her sleeve, so to speak. And she's open, like you said, you have to teach our children to understand, to be safe. You don't give people your number right off.
Right.
Yeah, you have to look and assess stuff before you just jump into relationships. So that's
Right.
what she did. It happened again. And she started a couple years ago, she started cutting herself. So I saw
Uh-huh.
that on your slide. And that was very interesting to me. My eyes like popped when I saw that statistic slide that you had pulled up. And also she threatened suicide.
Right.
And so that's still going on. Back in August, she was missing for 3 days. So we were horrified. We were horrified. So it was just, when you said that these children get on these sites and they start giving out information, these predators are out there and they're pretending to be one thing and then another. She did it. It's no, can't, whitewash it or whatever. She did it. She got on the site. She thought this young boy was a young boy and he was actually a grown man.
Right.
And she was missing for 3 days. We had to get the FBI, the police, and everybody, the radio stations, TV, media, everything involved. Bless the Lord, they located her. He took her to Chicago and getting ready to sex traffic her is what was what the
Holy Christmas.
yeah, it was horrible. It was horrible. And this was just in August. And the Lord brought her back home on my birthday, on that Sunday. And truly, that was a great birthday present
Yep.
for me. And so this is real. This stuff is real. And she's still going through emotional and mental issues, trying to, just trying to understand who she is in this whole scheme of called life. And so we just really have to be protective, and we are. I think we are, as a family, pretty much protective, but those little seams, those little cracks, get through. And I think that what your program and is so very detrimental. And I wish you would have recorded this, because it looked like it's being recorded.
Yes, it is being recorded. Yeah, you can get it on the Learning Revolution site probably in 3 days or so. Or send me your email. I'll send you the link when they put it up.
Okay, I appreciate that, because my daughter, her mother also, she runs a daycare, and her students and her families, her students' families need to hear this.
Yep.
This is just, especially when you're dealing with young folks and who's raising families. It's like sometimes they just don't have a clue. And they think it's just all in with everything. So I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for bringing it to life. I really appreciate you being here as well. Teddy, you got any final comments? We're up on our 50 minutes. I thought it was going to be a short one today. What do you think of that one?
I thought the presentation was great. A couple of things I wanted to add on to what Gigi has said, that in addition to what you had mentioned in your presentation, that folks should be also aware of scammers as well. A lot of people may think, well, it only happens to elderly people and young adults, or those with families, but a lot of children come from affluent homes who may have credit cards, who may have debit cards, and it's very easy to get caught up in the hype when you see these advertisements, these sponsored, these promotional ads on these social media platforms. And a lot of times these products never show up to your door. You never get them upon arrival. Your money is now gone, and you're either being duped or you're trying to meet someone, like what GGS said, being catfish, where some folks may apply these filters what they see online, trying to lure people, meet with them, and then they may not claim who they are. And the last I wanted to add was artificial intelligence. It's something that I think as time goes on with the modification of social media, there will come a point in time where, someone may take your identity, change a couple images here and there, tweak maybe your nose, your eyes, your facial features, just to replicate how you look in order to access your account or try to get access to your phone. So I really enjoyed this presentation. Unfortunately, this information doesn't get enough attention because we live in a tech world where a lot of people just think, well, everything is safe online, but in reality, some of the stuff is being stored, like you said, in people's devices, personal spaces. But to leave up on a good note, I think it's time that we have this discussion. So if you know anybody who's an avid social media user, or if you feel suspicious of anybody on social media, I think this would be a good idea to talk to them or find ways to educate others within your circle, community, schools, classrooms, and better informed of, be aware of certain individuals and certain pages, groups, and just social media as a whole.
Right. Thanks, Teddy. Good to hear from you again. Nicole, I saw you had a clap there. Do you want to, I know you came in late. Do you want to say anything about what we were talking about today?
Yeah, so especially about the social media thing, the newest one is that if you don't have your stuff locked down, they go on and they take all your pictures and they take your name and then they start adding your friends. And then they start messaging your friends trying to be you. So it's better to have all of your stuff locked down because even then they can just get your profile picture. But if you don't have anything, they take all of your pictures, all of your data, stuff like that. And I also wanted to say to Gigi, as somebody who's a millennial who struggled a lot in high school, it gets better when you get older. Like I hated when people said, oh, your teens are like the time of your life. No, your teens are so hard. Like when I got into college is when like it got so much better for me and like the bullying a lot of the time really stopped. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm glad you're doing better, and thanks for joining us today. And on that note, yeah, I want to leave you with that too. As someone who's worked in domestic violence for years and has worked in bullying, obviously in schools and so forth, there is, and I appreciate Gigi mentioning that, there is a point where we have to also talk to the victim about what's going on with them, because it's important that we don't just say, oh, you're a victim, because then that victim mentality ends up affecting the rest of their lives. And if they're giving away information too quickly, or they're trying too hard, or I used to tell kids, you can pick your nose in the bathroom if you're by yourself. Don't pick your nose in classroom because it's gross and kids will make fun of you. And if something's happening like that, where kids are overly anxious, or they're, they may feel a need to make friends and to be kind of that person that is so open-hearted and so good and giving and so forth, but that can be very, very dangerous. And it can, I mean, not just from the perspective of online stalkers or those kinds of things, but just from a life perspective, being able to stand up for ourselves, setting healthy boundaries, doing this, that's what this conversation is. It's a conversation about teaching kids how to be okay with themselves. And it sounds like Nicole's done that. So thank you all for being with us today. I hope you're enjoying this fantastic summit that the Learning Revolution has put together. If I can help you with anything, if you want a copy of this, you can send me an email to rusty@schooltools.com. Thanks for all you're doing out there for the kids in your care. You are amazing. You are touching the future. And I look forward to seeing you next time here on the Connected Classroom. Have a fantastic day.